So if you want to know how Turbo makes crazy samples and beats in the style of 1 of 1 for Gunna and Roddy Ricch, this is the perfect video for you. Yo guys, what's up and welcome to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how Turbo makes crazy samples and beats in the style of Gunna and Roddy Ricch for the album 1 of 1, which just dropped, and the sample I will be breaking down is like a melodic type of sample, but it's a really beautiful one, and I've got a lot of sauce in here how to build like these patterns and how to make these melodies. Y'all have just heard that, and as y'all have heard, I kept the drums very simple because on the album it's the same, like the drums are very simple, just that Gunna can basically like float over them. And I know Turbo didn't produce the song Let It Breathe with Roddy Ricch, but he produced Time Reveals, Be Careful What You Wish For, and it's basically the same style, I would say. So this video is going to be about like both of these and like a few more songs like Dollar Signs. It's an emotional sample as well, or like a melodic one. And if you haven't already, please make sure to check out Lucaland, my kid store. The link for that is in the description, and use code starstruck for my newest kit, which has over 500 sounds in there. It's very cheap for the value, so y'all make sure to check it out. And if you want to get it, make sure to use starstruck, as I said, for I think 18 or 19%, so basically $5 off. The kit has a drum kit, phrases, samples, and many more things for y'all to improve at making samples and beats. It's like an all-rounder kit, I would say, so I'd really appreciate if y'all check that out. And if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like, to subscribe, and to let me know in the comments on what y'all think of the album 1 of 1. And I don't want to keep it into too long, so yeah guys, let's go. So I started off with Keyscape, and I used the LA Custom C7 grand piano, which is I think like the first piano. Yeah, it's the first piano when you just open Keyscape, and the only thing I did was just turning off the reverb, and that's all I did. And I laid down this pattern, which looks really complex, and I started off with this chord, which is basically in G-7, and I added this D and I added this D4 and this G3, like this lower G, just to make it sound a little bit more full and to give it a lot more texture. And then as you can see, I just laid down like this little top line, or like these notes that go up, and I obviously arpeggiated the chord. As you can see right here, I had these two D notes, then this G to an D5, and then I basically arpeggiated the other chord, which is basically the same chord, but I just went down from the G to an F, and from this A sharp to an A, and I added this F for a root note, and then I had this A sharp, and F, because I wanted to use these notes but in a higher octave, because it basically always sounds good. And then for the next chord, I went back to the G chord and arpeggiated it again, and had this top line here, which I basically just freestyled like on the piano roll. I just looked what sounded good and I stayed in the scale. Then after that, I had these three notes right here, which is basically just like something that goes up, which can happen if you play like a real piano, not with three notes but like with one. But I just wanted to make it sound a little bit more realistic. I lowered the velocity of these notes, and then for the second part, I just copied over the whole pattern besides the top line, just that it goes up and then down for the end. And that's all I did. I strummed it with Alt and S and randomized the velocities with Alt and R, which just makes it sound a little bit more realistic. And the finished piano pattern is sounding like this. And then for the effects on this piano, which are really simple, I have this Valhalla vintage verb where I tweaked the mix, the pre-delay, the decay, and the low cut. Then this EQ, as you can see, I just EQ'd out some frequencies that were too harsh. And this simple EQ where I just cut out some of the lows to leave some space for the bass. And that's the whole effect chain for this piano. Then for the next thing, I have this electric guitar right here, which was from Splice. And the only thing I did was time stretching it, because it was in G minor and the original piano was in G minor as well. So I just time stretched it, put the declicker mode to generic, and load the volume by a bit. And as you can see right here, I had like a little intro, and as you could hear and obviously see now, I chopped it up and made like this little intro from the guitar, which sounds really nice. And then this phrase right here, which goes over 18 bars. And that's all I did for this guitar. As you can see, with the declicker mode generic, you don't have these clicking sounds when it plays, or like when it transitions from the one to the other note. And the finished guitar is sounding like this. And then for the effects on this guitar, the only thing I have on there was this soothe. On its default settings, I just turned this thing from soft to hard. And this EQ right here, where I just EQ'd out some lows and ducked one of the low frequencies and like a mid frequency. And I had a 12% in stereo. Then for the next thing, I have this vocal right here and I pitch it down by 2, put the mode to stretch. The declicking mode is just on transient, so the default thing. I normalized it and that's all I did. And as you can see, I just looped this vocal phrase and the finished vocal phrase is sounding like this. And for the effects on this vocal, I have this through the delay too with these settings right here. Then this through the reverb where I tweaked the decay, the wet knob and the stereo separation. This soothe on its complete default settings. This EQ where I just cut out some of the lows and some of the highs just to bring it a little bit more into the background. And I had a 12% in stereo as well. Then for a very important thing, I have these 3 drum or percussion loops right here. One is from Splice and these 2 right here are out of my starstruck multi-kit, which you can see right here. It's out of the percloop section. There's the break and there's the Cray perc loop, and it's automatically time stretched, so I didn't do anything to the Cray perc loop. Same thing as for the break perc loop, but for this one I pitch it down by 3, put the mode to stretch, the declicking mode to transient, so on its default thing, and I had this simple crash, which is the Bolt Carla Raptor crash, and as you can see I pitched it up by 1, put the mode to stretch and reversed it for this part right here, and then didn't reverse it for this part right there, just that it like fades in really cool. And now I'm gonna play out these files together, and together they are sounding like this. Then for the effects on my perc loops, as you can see, I have this fully parametric EQ where I basically just duck some of the lows and some of the highs. And this simple EQ where I just cut out the lows and some of the mids and low mids and cut out some of the highs. Then this soothe on its hard setting and the depth to 4.9. This fully reverb with these settings right here, I just turned the mix to 35% and allowed the volume by a lot. Then for the crashes, I have this fully delay with the time on 8, then the level to 29.2, and I played a little bit with the cutoff and the wet knob. This Valhalla vintage verb where I tweaked the mix, the decay, the pre-delay and the low cut, and then this EQ where I EQ'd out all of the lows and low mids and a little bit, just like a tiny bit of the highs. And then for the third drum loop, I have this Valhalla vintage verb on there with these settings, and this simple EQ where I just cut out some of the lows again and a little bit of the highs. And then for the bass line, I use this Experimenter X bass, which y'all already know if y'all watching my videos, and I really love this bass for almost any type of sample. And as you can see, I just laid down this pretty simple bass line right here, which just follows the root notes from the original piano, and I didn't even randomize the velocities. I just lowered it a little bit to make it sound a little bit more softer, and that's all I really can explain. The finished bass line sounds like this. And for the effects on this bass, I have this simple soothe with these settings, this decapitator where I tweak the drive, the tone and the style, this EQ where I just EQ'd out some frequencies that were like a little bit too much for the sample, and I cut out the highs, and I ended 100% in mono. Then for the intro, as you can see right here, I have the crash again, then the electric guitar obviously, and this simple snake drum fill out of one of Cymatic's kits, and I automated the channel panning, as you can see right here, just that it goes from left to right and then to left again, or like the other way around. And that's all I did for this intro, and the intro is sounding like this. And now for the mastering chain, I have this Abbey Road vinyl stereo from Waves right here with this preset, and I just turned down the noise, the crackle and the clicks. Then this simple RC20 for the noise, the distortion, the magnetic and the EQ. This L1 limiter just to make the sample louder and limit it at -2 decibels. Then this sound shifter pitch 0 where, as you can see, I pitch it up by 3 semitones. This hyper chorus with its default preset, but the mix is turned to 8% wet. Then this EQ where I just duck some of the lows, and this simple soothe on its complete default settings. I just turned down this knob so it removes like some of the harshness of the sample. And now we'll show you all the sample with and without the mastering chain. So first of all, this is the sample without the mastering chain. And now this is the sample with the mastering chain, so the finished sample is sounding like this. And now for the beat breakdown, the first thing I obviously did was dragging in the sample, and I pitch it down by 2 just because I like the pitch a little bit more. And I put the declicking mode to generic, the mode to stretch. And now for the hi-hats, I have this hi-hat, the Luca hit hi-hat out of my Starstruck multi-kit, which you can see right here. I laid down a pretty simple pattern. It was originally obviously a 2-step hi-hat pattern, but I removed some notes, added a few rolls as you can see, and that's really all I did. It's a really simple beat as I told y'all, but it really fits the vibe of the album, and I can't really explain too much for this hi-hat pattern because it's so simple, but it sounds like this. Then for the next thing, I have this Luca Babe clap out of the Starstruck multi-kit again, and all I did was laying down the basic clap pattern, which sounds like this. Then for the next thing, I have this Luca hit snare, and as you can see, I just have 6 notes on there, but it creates a little bit more of a bounce, and it makes the beat sound a little bit more full. So this is how the snare pattern sounds like. Then after that, I used the Luca openhat and laid down this pattern, which sounds like this. And if you have heard the album, you will know that they use like not many 808s, but I use a lot of guitar basses, and so did I used the X bass again and laid down this pattern right here, which is very simple. It just follows the root notes of the original sample, and I have this thing right here which basically makes the bass line go up and transition into the A again, and the same thing right here again, just with a little bit less notes. And I randomized the velocities with Alt and R, and what I'm going to show you as well is this kick right here, which is the Luca rack kick, and it always plays on C and just follows the bounce of the bass line. And that's all for the beat, and the finished beat is sounding like this. So yeah guys, I don't want to make the outro too long, so if y'all enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, to subscribe, and to leave a comment on what y'all think on Gunna's new album. And if you haven't already, I would highly recommend y'all to check out the Starstruck multi-kit. As I said, it has over 500 sounds to improve your sample and beat making, so don't miss out on that one, and use code STARSTRUCK for almost $5 off. It's a very good deal. And if you haven't already, please make sure to check out my IG as well. I would really appreciate that. And without saying too much, thank y'all for watching this video, and thank y'all for supporting me. And yeah guys, see y'all.